So today I'm going football crazy and I've made these fantastic cakes using the giant cupcake pan. So I've got team blue and team red, so you can decide which one you like the best. You can do it to the theme of your favourite football team. It can be done for an adult, it can be done for a child. You don't even have to model the figure on the top, you could leave it as it is. So we've got lots going on these cakes. We've got a textured scarf, we're making the football, we've got the model, the lettering, the texture on the board. So I'm going to show you lots of ideas and you can pick and choose what you want to do, but I hope you enjoy watching. So I've baked my Madeira sponge in a giant cupcake pan. And as you can see, it never looks very appetising when you cook in that tin, I find, but it's because the cakes are so deep that they have to be in quite a long time. But trust me, I've eaten a cake from the giant cupcake pan and they do taste really, really nice. I used the Madeira cake mix and I used 1.250 kilos of the cake mix. So that's equal to around a 10-inch round cake recipe. But I'd advise that you use a firm Madeira sponge for this. So what we're going to do, we're going to start with the base and we're going to try and cut in a very straight line. Never very good at cutting a straight line. We want to, oh dear, we want it to be quite even. As I said, I'm not very good at cutting a straight line, so I'm just going to even that out, because otherwise we're going to have a very wonky cake. That's a bit better. Now what I'm going to do is put some buttercream onto a 5-inch round single thick card, because the board I've covered in sugar paste. So I think it's nicer for people to cut into a cake when it's actually on a hard board rather than cut into sugar paste in a board. So that one's all ready. And now we've got to do the same with this one. And I don't know that there's a very easy way of doing this. So this is how I tend to do it. Just put it on the side, just go very slowly, checking that you're keeping it as straight as you possibly can. And I've got another single thick card as well for the top part to go on. It's not completely necessary, but I just think it creates a firmer cake, especially if you're going to be travelling it. So I'm just going to put some buttercream to stick it down. And then I've just got some other cards that I can pop them onto to make it easy for me to cover my cakes. Now I'm going to do this one, this time in a blue sugar paste, because you can choose the favourite colour of your football team. So this one is by Sattina and it's called Regency Blue. So again, it's a nice vibrant colour. And we've got true red on this one over here. So give your sugar paste a really good knead. And I'm just going to pop this to one side because I've realised we need to buttercream our cake. So make sure you've got quite a nice soft buttercream. If it's too firm, all it's going to do is pull the cake away. So you just want a thin layer all the way round. So I've finished buttercreaming both sides of my giant cupcake. So we're going to start by covering the base to begin with. So I've got my Regency blue Sattina sugar paste. And I know that it's about the width or the length of my board. I've done it so many times now. So I'm going to pop some icing sugar down. If you're unsure how long you need to roll your sugar paste out, the easiest way is to get some ribbon or string, and then you can cut it to the size that you need to roll it to, and then you can have it laid along your board. So I'm going to start by rolling the height to begin with. And it's actually not as tall as you think it is. Couple of last little rolls. So I'm just going to use a smoother. Just press quite firmly. Smooth it all out. And then if we cut a straight edge along one side, I'm just going to have a little measure. So I'm going to go slightly taller. So I'm going to go about here. I'm just doing this by eye. I'm not being overly fussy at all. There we go. Just going to even that out a little bit. There we go. Now the easiest way to get it around the cupcake is to simply roll it all the way up. So I'm just going to clean this board a little bit here. There we go. Okay, so remember what side is your straight edge. And then very carefully wrap it around. Now as you go, just use the palm of your hand just to stick it to the buttercream. Now I've come all the way round and I've actually got excess over. So I'll turn it around for you. So what I'm going to do, I can see where it is underneath, so I'm just going to cut using the palette knife. Now where you have your join, just squeeze it together slightly. If it's not sticking together, just pop a little bit of edible glue in between. And then with the top bit, I tend to just flap it over the top. And just use the palms of your hand just to give it a final rub. Now in here, I'm just going to insert these separator sticks. Because again, if you're going to transport the cake, this will just give some added strength. So we're going to bring in the top half of our cupcake, which I'm going to cover in white sugar paste. So always give it a good knead. And then I always use some icing sugar so that it doesn't stick. Got a few blue bits. It's the thing when you're using dark colours, it always goes everywhere. So I'm going to give a very quick measure by placing my rolling pin over the top, and you can just gauge roughly how large you need to roll it out. I always roll it out too big usually. I never get it quite right. So I think that's about right. So if you use your smoother before you place it on top, you know that you're starting with a sugar paste that's nice and soft. Now before I actually put it on, I've noticed that I have actually done a little mistake here. Because we're doing a football, I'm just going to very gently take off the very top, because I actually want it to be a little bit more rounded. So I'm just going to pop some buttercream just to cover that up. No one needs to know. So let's bring that back in and just kind of roll it over the top. It's quite a nice easy shape, this one. Going to use the smoother, get a nice smooth finish, and it also gives you a slightly flatter top, which is where we're going to put our footballer. So I'm just going to cut away the larger excess to begin with. And then cut away around the base. Now don't cut it too tight at this point, because we're going to place it on top of the cupcake, and the excess we're going to slightly wrap underneath the edges. So I'm leaving probably a 1/2 centimetre gap, which you can feel with your fingers. There we go. Which looks a bit unfinished, but it won't do. So now what I need to do is bring in our base. Now I'm going to pop some buttercream all over the centre. My buttercream is very soft. It's very hot in here today. There we go. Look at that. Looks gorgeous. Okay. So then very carefully, don't forget this is on a board, so it makes it easy for you to get your fingers underneath and place on top. Now it's looking really untidy, so we're now going to spend our time in tidying this up. So with the edges, just fold them under. If need be, use a tiny bit of edible glue. Let me just reach mine. So you can just pop some edible glue just on the underneath. And just tuck it under all the way round. Now we're ready to place it onto our sugar paste board. So let me just bring that in. So I've coloured it in a spring green colour. I'm just going to pop some buttercream in the middle of my board. And very carefully, we are going to lift our cake up. And again, it's on a board, so you can easily lift and manoeuvre your cake around. And now we're ready to decorate, the fun part. We're going to start with the football at the top, and I've got the Pentagon and Hexagon shapes here, which are by Framar Cutters, and they are brilliant if you are doing football themed cakes. I wouldn't even say attempt to cut the shapes yourself. So I've got some black sugar paste. And I want to roll it as thinly as I can get away with a sugar paste, because I don't want them to stick up too much. I want it to look as if it's part of the ball. Okay. So we're going to use the pentagon shape. Let's see how many I did. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I did 6 all together. I should know that. Okay. So we've got our 6 shapes. And we're going to start on the very top. It doesn't really matter where or how you start, to be honest with you. Always try and pick a side for the front that you think looks better. But it doesn't matter too much. So I'm just going to stick them down with some edible glue. I'm going to start with the one on the very top. Now the shapes don't fit exactly around this shape, so I've done it very, very roughly to the best that I could actually do it. And I did use the hexagon to roughly mark out where my next shape needs to go. So if you've got this here, then this fits in between. So what you could do is you could roughly place them all on. So let me turn it round for you. Just very roughly. So you can see I'm putting the flat side up against the top, and then I'm putting the pointed triangle facing towards each point. So we're going to stick these in place. So we're going to use, I've got the quilting tool here, and as you can see, it's got jagged edges on the end. So what I'm going to do is run this from point to point, and the same going round the side. So you will have some gaps that are slightly larger than the other, but honestly, when you've got all your design on the cake, it's really not going to notice. You don't need to be overly too fussy. And then because I've got these bits going on here, I'm just going to finish off with some lines coming down at a slight angle all the way round. There we go. So we have our football topper. So now all we need to do is some stripes all the way round the side. So I've got some white sugar paste. So I'm going to give it a good knead. So we're going to roll this out. Now to get the stripes nice and even, I'm going to use the multi-ribbon cutter by FMM. It's a fantastic tool. You can do all different sizes, different widths. It's a really, really handy tool. So again, I'm going to try to roll this as thin as I can get away with sugar paste. If you wanted to, you could use modelling paste. It does make it very neat, but it is an extra cost to your cake, and you might not necessarily always want that. So I've got my multi-ribbon cutter. I've already got it set to the width that I want my stripes to go. So I'm just going to run it along. See how many you can do in one go. If you were doing this with a knife, you wouldn't get them even. How quick was that? So we're going to take away the inner parts. There we go. And then with the palette knife, I'm just going to cut them off at the base. So I've got nice straight bottom edges to start to do my stripes. So I'm actually going to start where my join was. Really good way of hiding a join. Little tricks that you can do. So we're looking at roughly here. So if we give that a measure, that's about right. So what you can do is you can cut all your strips to size. And move it up. It's a much quicker way of doing it. You still may have to trim a little bit because when you pick sugar paste up, it tends to stretch. So before I put it on, I'm going to use my quilting stitch wheel, and I'm just going to mark either side. And again, this is just another way of adding texture, another finer detail. Again, you don't have to do this. These are just to give you ideas of what you can achieve. Oops, I'm going wiggly now. You need a steady hand. So let's start to stick some of these in place. So the easiest way I find, I've got black all over my hands, is to put it in the palm of my hand, put it at the base. Oh, we're going to have to stretch this one up a little bit. What's happened here? There we go. And then I've just used my eye as I go round. I haven't measured to get an equal distance, but if you feel you want to have an equal distance, then you can measure between each strip. And that's the last strip. to go on. So you can see just by adding the stripes, get a really good football theme going on there. So let's clear this way. Now, to me, I felt the edge looked quite messy, so I thought this was a really cool idea. So these are football sugarettes. They come ready-made. And you can just simply stick them, a little bit of edible glue, all the way around the top edge. There we go, all the way around. So that's starting to really look good. So now we're going to do a football scarf. Oop. So I'm going to use the same colour blue. And this time I'm going to give it a knit effect, or woolly sort of knitted scarf effect. And for this I'm going to use the knit rolling pin by FMM, so it's got the lovely texture on there. So we want to start with a sausage shape. So we're going to roll a nice long shape. So I'm going to start by getting the width that I want, and then start to roll the length. So I've rolled that to around 3mm in thickness. So I'm actually going to put a very tiny bit of icing sugar just over the top. We can clean it up afterwards, so don't worry. And then you're going to start one end, and you can press nice and firmly, and you wait till you see this lovely pattern. I think this has got to be one of the best textured rolling pins that I've used. Look at that lovely pattern. If you want to keep your scarf plain, then by all means do so. It's totally up to you what you want to do. So I'm just going to go underneath with my palette knife. So I just want to make sure that we're not sticking anywhere. So I've cut the ends off nice and neat. I've set the ribbon cutter to the width that I'd like for my scarf. And don't do it up too tightly. And then you just need to roll it all the way across to the end. Easy peasy. And then you know that you've got a scarf that's all equal, and it does make a difference. So at this point we now need to decide what is going to be our front. So on the original cake I've put the number on the white bit in the front, so I know that one of these has got to be my central point. And the reason I say that is because the scarf is going to wrap round right at the very front, so you just need to bear that in mind. So what we're going to do is again roll this up very loosely, not too tightly, and then I'm going to get my edible glue, and we're just going to dab it around. And again, you don't need to put too much on because we're going to wrap it round very loosely. It's just something for it to hold on to. So I'm going to make this the front, I think. Now what I want to do is create a few ripples as I go round. So I'm not going to wrap it round really tightly. Let's bring it all the way round. Look, I only just meet up there. That's lucky. So we're going to have the scarf. Just slightly open the scarf at the beginning. Just gives it an idea of movement, that it's fabric or wool as opposed to a very hard. There we go. So we got a few ripples going on there. You can use the paintbrush just to make a few more. There we go. So I'm quite happy with that. Let's make sure that's stuck at the front. So I'm just going to have it slightly open. There we go. So the next thing we need to do is add some lettering to our board. So I've got some pre-made lettering that I've cut out, and for this I've used the Easy Push lettering. Now if you cut them out the day before, this was just sugar paste. You can see I can pick it up and it's not wiggling around, and the reason being is I'd like to decorate them. So I've got an edible pen, and this is by PME, and I thought it would be nice to add some stripes. And of course, if you've got a favourite football team, maybe you could do something that ties in with that. And I think by outlining in the black, let's use the other end. This has got a nice brush end. I think it just makes the lettering stand out on the board. There we go. Now for the stars, you can buy these wonderful plunger cutters, and they come in a set of 3. So I've used the largest one from that set, and again that was just sugar paste, and if you make them the day before they will set. Not completely hard, you need to be a little bit careful with them, but they will set. And then I've just added them down the side of the lettering. So we've decided, or I've decided, that this is going to be my centre point. So because I've got 3 letters, I'm going to make sure that the E is in the middle. So I'm going to start by sticking that one down. That one's the wet one. There we go. So you could leave it at that if you wanted to, but I'm going to add some wafer strands which match the sugar paste perfectly, and it just adds another texture to your cake. So I'm just going to put some glue all the way round the board. I don't think there's any easy way of doing this, so I'm just going to simply pour and then you can get a paintbrush and you can just tidy up where the lettering is. And then you can finish it off with some more of the football sugarettes all the way round. So just put a tiny bit of glue and they'll just rest on top. So I'm just going to randomly place loads of footballs all the way round. So there we are. Now your cake is all finished. I talked earlier about cleaning the icing if you have a few marks from the icing sugar or corn flour. So you can use something called glaze spray, and it's fantastic at getting rid of any marks. So I'm just going to give it a very light spray. At first it will look wet, but I'm only doing it lightly so it will actually dry. And if you wanted to give a shine to your ball, you can also add the glaze spray and it will give a natural shine as if it's real leather. And there's also a set that you can buy where you get a trophy, football boots and a little football. So at this point you could just simply add candles, or if you've got a star in your family, you may want to add the trophy to the top, a football, and not forgetting the all-important football boots, which I've stuck down with a tiny bit of royal icing. So there you have your cake all finished. So if you'd like to make the model, then keep watching and we'll make a footballer on the top. In this lesson, I'm going to show you how to make this footballer on the top of the cupcake. I think he looks really good sitting there proudly holding his trophy, and we're going to hand make a football as well. So we're going to bring in our original cake. We've done the blue theme this time, it's team blue. So I'm using a modelling paste. Now you want to use modelling paste because it will hold its shape. If you use sugar paste, it will just sink down. So if that ever happens to you, that's where you're going wrong. You need to use a good modelling paste. So I'm using a Sattina Perfect Paste, but you can use any brand of modelling paste. So I'm starting by rolling my flesh colour into a sausage. So we're going to start with the legs to begin with. Now I've coloured this with paprika flesh, and that's by Sugar Flare Paste Colour. So now I'm going to cut down the middle and then you're just going to smooth the edges and then turn it over and do exactly the same on the back. Now we need to make sure that both legs look quite equal, so you haven't got one that's really chunky and the other one's really skinny. Try and get them as even as you can because it will look better. So we're going to stick that straight onto the cake. So I'm just going to pop some edible glue, and we need to make sure that our footballer is facing the right way. So I'm going to have him slightly with his legs apart like that. Now where the knee join is, I'm just going to pinch with my fingers and create a knee. And again, you want to try and get those as evenly spaced as you can. There we go. So then we're going to roll some paste for the shorts. Now I've just coloured this with a little bit of ice blue and I've also mixed in some of the original sugar paste, probably about 1/3 of the sugar paste, in with the white modelling paste. So just to let you know, and I'm going for a slightly lighter colour. I thought we'll lighten it up on the top of the cake. So just use some corn flour. Because I've got a son, and my next door neighbour's daughter, she plays football, and they tend to wear their shorts really long. So I'm going to cut that slightly wider. Just cut the edges off there. Let's give another measure. Because you want it to go down at the back as well. You want that to flap all the way round at the back, and then it's going to go down slightly in the middle. So I'm just going to cut the edges off at a slight angle. So before you put any edible glue down, have a little play with this until you get it right. I could give you sizes, I could give you templates, but you might do thicker legs, you might do thinner legs, you might do a smaller model. So it's best just to keep chopping away very slowly until you have the desired amount, and that looks about right. So what I'm going to do is just pop some glue on the bits where I want it to stick. Now I'm going to place it on top. So first of all, I'm going to make sure it just covers at the back there, because we don't want to see any flesh. And then we're going to bring it down the sides. Because it's modelling paste, you can pull it slightly just to stretch it in the places where you need to. And I'm just going to use this here. Let's give that a cut actually. Just give a slight cut. And then if you just pull it around his knees, just pull it up slightly, and it just gives the impression of material. Let's have a look. And you can just pinch the edges, thin it out a little bit. Okay, so we've got his shorts. And then we're going to do the socks. So I've got some white modelling paste. So we're going to roll that out. And then we're just going to cut it in half. And just cut away the edge. You want the socks to be nice and long. They wear them up to their knees when they're training. So let's have another measure. Still slightly too long, so I'm just going to take another little bit away. And then measure the other one. That's about perfect, so we can stick those into place. Yeah. And we're just going to give a ribbed effect around the top of the socks where they fold their socks over. So I'm just going to re-roll that out. Do a nice long strip. And just cut the edges away. And I think that's about right. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to trim it once it's on there. So with the blade tool, if you just do marks as if it's a ribbed top sock, the same. So don't press all the way through. There we go. And then we can glue that into place. And then just trim away the excess. There we go. So I thought I'd give him some nice, or her, whatever you are, whoever you are doing the cake for, some nice bright orange football boots. They all seem to wear these brightly neon colours these days. So I'm going to start with a bigger ball, probably a marble size. Cut it in half, and then you know you've got two that are equal size. So roll it into a little sausage shape. And then just flatten it down. And then let's just hold that up. I know that looks okay. So we're just going to stick that to the end of his feet. Hey, look at that. He's got his football boots. Okay, now we're ready to do the body part. So that our body sits upright and he's not going to wiggle backwards, sideways or anywhere, I'm going to use a cake pop stick. So we're going to insert it in through the middle. Try and get it as straight as you can. Now remember, the top half is on a board, so it may go all the way down, but you may not want it to go all the way down. We need to gauge roughly how big we think our footballer is going to turn out to be. So I'm going to leave it at that, and we're going to start by modelling the body. So I'm going to roll it into a cone shape between the palms of my hands. You get a lovely cone shape that way. So I'm just going to take a little bit off. I don't want him to be too heavy with the body. So I think that's about right. And then with your thumb and your finger, just press inside. So you're making a slight indent and you're just pinching the edge between your thumb and index finger. And then if we pop some edible glue, Now hold on to the cake pop stick, because if it hasn't touched the board, by just pressing it on, it's just going to sink down. So I want to hold on to it, and I want to try and make it central. And then I'm going to hold on to the top of the cake pop stick. So you can see we've got room for the head to go on the top, his body. So with the arms, we're going to go back to the flesh colour. And we're going to roll it into a long sausage. Now you want the arms to be thinner than the legs. Cut them at a slight angle. It may be that you cut them too long, and you can always correct that afterwards. So if you have both the triangles facing each other, what we're going to do is pinch the ends, and this is for the hands. And then I'm just going to roll them both in, and then we're going to cut for the thumb. So just poke that out, and then make 3 lines, but don't cut all the way through. And then we just thin the wrist area. There we go. So I've just popped some glue on the triangle bits. When you stick the arms on, make sure you stick them on the right side. Think about what way the thumb is going to go. So I'm just going to bring his arm round, because he's going to be holding a football. Now I'm going to stick the football in place, and then I'll show you how I made it, because you want to leave it to dry for an hour, something like that. So I'm just going to glue it by using some modelling paste, which I'm just going to stick up to his belly. Tiny bit on there. And then we're just going to bring in the football like that. And then we're going to bring one hand round here, and of course the other hand is holding the trophy. I nearly forgot that. So we're going to stick the trophy on. You need a bit of royal icing for the trophy. So we're going to stick the trophy beside him, like so. Okay, and that should set like that. So the next thing we need to do is his sleeves. So we're going to use some more of the blue. So I'm going to cut it in half to begin with, and then I'm going to cut 2 strips. I'm just going to measure whether I think that's deep enough, and I think that's absolutely fine. So you want to cut at a diagonal, a bit like a triangle shape. And what you can do is put the other one on top to get them roughly the same size. So my triangle is a little bit too angled. So I'm just going to bring it in slightly. And then we can add those either side. You want to just very slightly tuck them under, very slightly. Now all football players, they all have their own teams and they have their little emblem on the front of their t-shirt. So I created my own little emblem with some modelling paste. And we're going to cut a very small shield kind of shape. See if that fits on his shirt. Let me make it slightly smaller. And part of the logo for my own football team is the stripes. So yet again, we're bringing in the edible pen to match the wording that's on the board. Oops, stuck to my finger there. And then I've got a tiny, tiny star that I've used the plunger cutter set. And again, this was a set of 3. And I've used the tiny plunger cutter set. Just to stick on top. So I'm going to put a bit of glue on there. I think that might be easier because this is not dry. I need to try and get it on there without marking my emblem, which could be tricky. There we go. I'm not going to fiddle with that anymore. So for the head, I'm just going to give this a bit of a knead. I'm going to start with a neck. So just roll a ball. Just pop that over the top. Looks a bit odd if you just put a head straight on. It looks a bit like they're sitting like this. So you want them to have a bit of a neck. They're proud. Their team's won. So first of all, we need to measure the size. Now we need to get the proportion of the head right. I think that looks pretty good. So I'm just going to give it a good knead. I want to get rid of any cracks or marks in the icing. I'm going to have a slightly longer face, a bit like mine. So first of all, we're going to mark for the eyes. You can use the end of a paintbrush. I just happen to have the friller tool here. So the eyes go in first. And it's about a third up. And then on the other side of this tool, I have a smiley face, so you could use half a straw if you didn't have one of these. So I'm going to mark, because he's very happy at his team winning the trophy. And then we're going to roll a tiny ball. So it's going to be his nose. We'll do his ears once he's on the top. So for the eyes, you want to try and get these even, because you don't want one eye bigger than the other eye. It'll look a bit odd. So it's quite tricky. That doesn't look too bad. So just pop some glue into the holes, and then you can just drop the eyes in there. Oh, doesn't want to go in. There we go. Now I'm going to make my life easy, and I'm going to do blue eyes to match his uniform. So we want very, very tiny little blue eyes. So roll them both together so that you can see that they're about roughly the same size. And then we're going to pop his eyes in the front there. There we go. So now I'm going to attempt to put him on the top. Try not to squish the head at this point, so be very gentle, and you just want to twist without squeezing. Take it very slow and just twist. So I'm now going to take an edible pen. So go very gently. You could use brown actually, black is sometimes quite harsh. And then I'm just going to give him just a couple little eyelashes. And I'm going to leave it at that. And then we need the ears. Cut it in half, and then you've got two ears. You want them to be matching in size. So the ears go, you can look at your own ears and think where they go, and they're kind of in the middle, just below the eyes. They're a lot higher up than you actually think. So I'm just going to pop it on the end of the blade tool. You can see I've put a little mark in it, but that actually makes a really good ear as well. Same the other side. So just have a check, make sure they look really even. So now we need to do the hair, is the last thing that we need to do. So I'm actually going to use Sugarpaste to do the hair. So I've got some nice golden brown Sugarpaste. So I'm going to give it a good knead. Just checking his arm hasn't fallen off. So we're going to start with a strip to begin with around the back of his head. So if we turn him around, we can have a little measure. So height-wise, that's fine. I'm just going to cut a bit more away. So now we're going to cover the head with some glue. And we're just going to wrap the strip around. Slightly too long there, but don't worry, you can just cut it. And then using your blade tool, you can now give some marks to look like hair. Now when you're doing hair, it's actually easier if you've left the head to dry, say overnight, or at least for 3 to 4 hours, because obviously it won't move around like it is here. You just have to be very careful that you don't squash anything. So now what I'm going to do is make lots of teardrop shapes to finish off the rest of his hair. And I want to hopefully give him quite a trendy style. That's the idea. So I'm just going to make sure we've got enough glue on the front of his hair as well. So now what we're going to do, we're going to fill the rest of it with these shapes. So I'm going to start by going one way first. So we'll do this half. Not quite sure what this will look at, but bear with me. So I've got 3 bits on there, so I'm just going to use the blade tool just to give it some markings, and also it just presses it into the head. Helps you to add a bit of style. Hey, got a bit of gel going on there. So now we're going to do the other side. I always find that easier just to do style one side and then we'll style the other. There we go. I'm quite pleased with that. That's quite good. So I've got one more thing. I keep saying this, but I've got some dust. And he's been running around the football pitch and he's quite hot. So this is called Skin Tone by Sugar Flare Blossom Dust. Obviously wipe away the excess, just very gently. It's better to add it little by little. It's a bit like doing your own blusher and mascara. Nice rosy cheeks. Okay, now one thing I realised, I didn't show you how to use this mould. Now this is by Gem and it's called Pop It Mould. It comes in 2 sizes, so great for cupcakes as well, but it really is easy to use. It's quite a hard mould, so you need to put enough corn flour inside. And then if you just pop your modelling paste inside, I'd advise you just use modelling paste. I think sugar paste would just get stuck and it would just stretch. But we can just give it a little help. There we go. So the nice thing with this mould, you can see it gives you the lovely indents. So then if you've got an edible pen, all you need to do is just colour in the bits on the ball. And like I said earlier, it is better if you leave it to dry, because then the pen's not going to mark into the icing. But really simple, really easy, and how nice to make some matching cupcakes maybe to go along with your football theme. So my football cake is all finished, and I've added a number at the front using the Push Easy cutters, the same that that I've used on the board, and I've added a matching ribbon around the side, which is a 15mm ribbon, which I think really finishes the look off. So as you can see, Team Blue is our winner today. I hope you've enjoyed watching and have lots of fun.